Welcome to ASD's Water Dowser Mastermind Conference Call. These talks, lasting for about an hour, are open to everyone and scheduled for the third Monday of each month at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Today is the 15th of June, 2020. I'm G from Northern California Dowsers in Redding, California. Jeanette and I will be joining your hosts, Sharon Hope and Ed Stillman, for tonight's program featuring Dale Miller. This will be recorded and accessible at ASD's website under the Members Only section. Thanks for holding your questions until the end. And now I'm turning the program over to Sharon Hope.
Thank you, G. And you and Jeanette do such a great job helping out with this conference call. So I'd like to congratulate you guys, too. And what a great job on your website. Thank you. So here we are. And we've been going for 2.5 years now. So we're real happy about that. It's been very successful. And I think we've gotten a lot of good information out. And there's more to come. And one thing we want you to know about is our up-and-coming West Coast Conference, which is coming up in July. And we have Susan Spooler here to make an announcement about it.
Hello, I am here. Hi, this is Susan Spooler. I'd like to invite everyone, and I'd like you to invite your friends to come to the pre-2020 virtual West Coast Dowser Conference. If you go to our website, www.dowserswestcoast.org, it'll tell you to send your email to info@dowserswestcoast.org, and we've been sending out information to everyone. We have over 60 speakers. We'll be running 24 hours a day for 5 days with dowsing classics, with new dowsers, with all sorts of amazing information, and it'll be the closest we could get to having the conference in Santa Cruz, California, the surfing capital of the world. So we'll be having speakers like Feather Anderson, Glass McCoy will be teaching the beginner school, Adi Two Owls, Roxanne Louise, Donna Black and Gary Grosbeck. Graham Gardner is giving a workshop. Our keynote speaker is Maria Wheatley from London. She has done studies on the elongated skulls. She also is, her father was a very famous British dowser, so she'll be speaking 3 different times. Our schedule will be going up onto the website very soon. We're just firming up, and we have all the speakers all signed up. We have a very organized conference. The talks will start at the top of the hour, and the speakers will be pre-recorded for the first 40 or so minutes, and then they'll come in live to answer your questions. There are a few speakers that will not be available to answer your questions, but we'll be providing email addresses and websites for you to get in touch with them. So, again, www.dowserswestcoast.org, and each room can hold up to 3,000 people, and we're using the platform of GoToWebinar, which is the industry leader for conferences and webcasts. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
All right.
Okay, you want to give out that information on how to sign up again?
Yep. If you want to just send an email, let us know. Just send an email to info@dowserswestcoast.org. Information will be on the website that states that, info@www.dowserswestcoast.org. And there's also a link on there to check your device to make sure that it has enough oomph to withstand GoToWebinar. So you'll know well in advance if you need to do an upgrade on your operating system, for example. So we have everything we've thought of everything.
Thank you very much. Susan did such a great job on this.
Thank you.
We are going to have a lot of speakers, and I look forward to speaking myself also.
That's right. And Sharon and Ed, right. Yes, absolutely. And we'll be having some secret rock stars, awesome speakers that will be a surprise coming up shortly here. So we just want to keep some suspense coming. So thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay.
And I'm wondering if Beth is on the phone. So I'm not sure. I'm not seeing her on the list, but there's several people who don't have their names listed. So at any rate, this Saturday at 2 o'clock, we are going to have a video call on GoToMeeting, and that will be with Beth Rosman, who is an ASD trustee. And she's going to be giving us a talk on dowsing, and that should be very interesting because she's a very talented dowser. And we will be sending out an announcement of that. It actually is on the website, too. So if you go on to dowsers.org, you will see it listed in the calendar for our talk and our meeting on Saturday. So that's 2 o'clock Pacific time. So hope you all will join us. And so we look forward to having that meeting also. So this is actually sponsored by 3 different ASD chapters, the NorCal Dowsers, and the Boston chapter with Susan Spooler, and myself. I have the Gold Country Dowsers in Oroville, California, and Butte County. So we look forward to having you on that call also. So all the information is at dowsers.org on the calendar. So right now I'd like to turn this over to Ed Stillman. And Ed is going to introduce our guest speaker for this evening. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Sherry. And I'm underway here. Master Water Dowser Dale Miller is our guest speaker on this month's Water Dowsers teleconference for today. And Dale has been actively dowsing for over 45 years. Dale is a Navy vet with a background in electronics, and he is currently an electrical contractor. Dale is a longtime member of the American Society of Dowsers, and he has dowsed over 700 commercial, residential, and architectural. No, that's not it either. We'll skip that one.
Yeah,
water wells. Dale utilizes remote viewing and on-site dowsing to pinpoint the depth of the well, the gallons per minute, and the place to drill. He also teaches basic and advanced water dowsing, including map dowsing and on-site secrets for successful dowsing. Dale, we'd like very much to welcome you to the Water Dowsers conference call. Please tell us how you got started in dowsing. Go right ahead.
Okay, thanks, Ed, Sherry, G, and Jeanette. Pleasure coming on. Here on the East Coast, it's about 8 o'clock, and so it's evening here, and I guess maybe not quite so much so out your way. But I got started in water dowsing when I was 19 years old, and I was on a construction site as a laborer, and I was kind of leaning on a shovel, and I watched this union plumber walk across the ground. He had 2 L rods in his hand, brass. I don't know, he went maybe 100 feet and it crossed. And I just watched him. I didn't know what he was doing. And pretty soon he motioned for a backhoe to come over. And the backhoe dug down about 3 feet to a drain line that was about 10 inches. I was flabbergasted. And I was just totally amazed. So after he got done work, I asked him, I said, what happened there? Can you tell me what you did to find that? And so he explained it to me. It was dowsing. Let me take a crack at it. It worked for me. And in a little town of 600 in Pennsylvania that I was from at that time, really wasn't anybody in the area that did stuff like that. So long story short, I started searching for information. In the back of a treasure magazine, I came across the American Society of Dowsers, so I contacted them. And they recommended a few books for me. I bought them. And that's how I kind of got my start. For many, many years, it was just me and books and just kind of pecking along. And so that took me up through to about the mid-'80s. And then I moved from Pennsylvania to Raleigh. And at that time, I got a little bit more serious about dowsing, because from the 70s up to the mid-'80s, I did a lot of underground utilities for like gas companies and people who had plugged drains and laundromats, all different kinds of stuff like that, plus a lot of water, some accurate, some not. And so I just advanced like that. But one of the things after the mid-'80s that really propelled me was I took a map dowsing class from Leroy Bolt, one of the past presidents, and boy, that really picked me up and put me on the track, because it opened my mind. And so I was very, very fortunate over the years to meet a lot of good master dowsers, and they gave me a lot of insight. And what I'm going to relate to you guys today is just my spin on dowsing, because everybody that starts, everybody that's been in the field for many years, have their own spin on how they do it and what works for them and what doesn't work for them. And I'm just going to try to give you little tidbits, but for those that's just getting into like water dowsing, I'm going to run you through what I think will kind of get you from A to Z to be successful. So before I get into that, I just want to run down some bullet points of what we're going to talk about today. We got through with me, so the first bullet point is permission to douse, and we'll talk a little bit about that. The next one I think is very important, especially for people that are starting to douse. It really doesn't matter if it's water dowsing or exactly what it is, but I mentioned years ago with just me and books. Well, as I learned over the years, and I interfaced with a lot of master dowsers, even on site with them, I always carried a notebook, and I wrote everything down. And I think a journal is really got some merit so that you can look back and go ahead. So then we're going to talk about dowsing devices itself, a client record form for water wells, and then the types of water, the basics of let's go find the water from a client standpoint, and then my way, that's going to be like if you're just getting started in water, and then I'll tell you a little bit about how I actually do it today. And again, this is just my take. Everybody's got their own thing. Then I'll tell you a little bit about the tools that I use, and then we're going to, one of the things I wanted to kick out, because, man, I have been caught so many times out in the dowsing field, and I was like, oh, man, I forgot my hammer, and, I can't pound a steak in kind of thing. So we're going to talk about a backpack of little tools to take that will, hopefully you won't use them all, but throw out when you get on location what you don't need, put the rest in your backpack, and then you'll always have what you need. I'm going to also tell you about, I'll try not to bore you, but I'm going to tell you a few short stories as we go along. And then I'll also mention some of the water wells that, I don't know, over the last 10 years or so that I've done, kind of memorable ones. And then a little bit about recommended books and just some information about me. So let's get started. The first thing I'd like to just say to get on this a good to get right, just to get down to basics is what is dowsing? I mean, how does it work? And what is dowsing? Well, you can look it up, and you'll get a million different terms and a million takes on it. But I'll tell you what mine is. My definition of dowsing is one's developed abilities of determining verifiable information pertaining to the pursuit and your pursuit and endeavors. And so that basically means tangible. You go out and shoot a well, and they drill, and you get the water. That's tangible. And so you've got verifiable information. And it's kind of like that, not only for water, but for everything. Whatever your pursuit is, it's great. I have treasure dowsers that call me all the time, and they'll say, "What do you get on this?" And they'll say, "I don't think I'm going to do this." Now, I do it for myself, but I don't particularly want to do it with them because all dowsers, if I went out into the field with another dowser, we may hit the same spot on the water line, water vein, or we may not, but we might both be fruitful on that. Treasure dowsing is a whole different thing, and we won't get into that, but I'm just mentioning it because there are areas that you really got to grow into, but water is really great, and it's not as simple a lot of times as people think it is. You can walk across the ground, get a reaction from a water vein. Then the next step is, how deep is it? How many gallons you're going to get at the wellhead? And which direction is it flowing? Does it impact other people if you drill on this thing? So there's a lot of information that goes into water dowsing. But the last bullet before we really get into the devices here is practice. And for those that are kind of where they need to be, they've got that down. But those that are just getting started, I recommend that you practice something 3 to 5 times a week, 55 minutes a day. And that would be yes, no answers. And a very simple way to do that is on the front end, if you're just getting started, you got to learn the reactions of whatever device. But you can lay a battery down, like on a table, and you've got a plus and you've got a minus. So the plus, you ingrain that as a program for yes. The minus, you ingrain it as a program in your head for no. So whatever your reactions are for yes and no, just practice that, and it will come alive for you. So now I think we'll just get right into devices, and I think everybody has to determine what type of device will comfortably work for them, because there are people that L rods work really good for, some people are pendulum people, and some people are Y rod people. And hey, Ed, if you can hear me, am I breaking up on your end?
No, I'm okay here.
Okay, all right.
There's no static, and you're coming through straight.
Okay, good. Okay. So the standard 3 devices that I want to talk about tonight, there are many, many more, but are simply the L rod, the pendulum, and the Y rod. And they don't always have to be anything fancy, but I would just say this. When people that are starting out get either one of those, get something that you really like. We can all wear a shirt, but we're not going to wear a shirt that we don't like. So find something that you like, and then you will use it. So that's my advice on that. When you start using the pendulum or the Y rod or the L rods, generally the first reaction that you get is going to be a positive one. So make note of it and write it down. So, and we'll get into that just a little bit more here. But it's if you establish the yes to start with, then sometimes you'll have trouble maybe getting the no. So the mind works on a conscious and subconscious and superconscious levels. And so on the conscious level, if you've got a reaction and you're considering that as no, and you can't really make it go, or it doesn't really react to no, then make it go. Consciously look at it. Let's just use the pendulum, for example. Like you're moving it back and forth, and it starts to go clockwise. And so that's your yes. So you say, okay, what's no? And it doesn't move. So make it move like that. And a real easy way to do that is to take 2 index cards, lay them down on the floor, plus and minus. On the back of the card, yes and no. And just consciously make it. Sometimes you gotta really force the mind to get it. But after you do it enough times, it'll just become automatic, and it will go like that. So I'm going to talk now about a little about the L rods. And so the stance for an L rod that I have come up to is I keep the elbows tucked into the side and the forearms at 90 degrees. And when you've got the L rods in your hands, it's important that they grip on the L rods do 2 things. One is you need to keep them down a little bit from the top so that they'll move freely, and the rod itself is not hitting the top of your hand a little bit. And the other thing is grip. You don't really have to grip it with everything you've got. It should be nice and firm but comfortable, and then just let them react like that. The tips, you'll have to play with the tips a little bit, but my take on the tips when you have them straight out in front of you is that they should be up just a hair above the waistline. I mean, you don't want them down, you don't want them up. You will find that magic spot, and then they will react for you. But if you're trying to locate something, let's say you're out on a water vein and you've established it and they cross. So how do you know exactly they crossed and you've got an idea where it's at, but how do you know where that spot is on the ground? You can lean forward a little bit and look down through it. If you have to, you can bring it back to your body and look down and find a spot visually on the ground with your eyes, and don't lose it. You should carry a screwdriver with you or something. I have markers I carry, but you should carry something, and whatever that spot is that you find on the ground, mark it so that you don't lose it, because you've been drawn there. You're there for a reason, and that's your spot. So L rods generally open and close, and so on the grassroots, you have to determine what if they close, what's it telling you, and you could ask for a yes. You could go back to those index cards on the floor and just walk over it and ask what is yes, and whatever that reaction is, that's the one you engrave. The opposite of that will be your no. And so as you progress with L rods, you'll find that you don't always have to use 2 L rods. You can program yourself to use 1 L rod. And where this is really handy is if you're out in the field and let's just say it's a windy day and they're kind of flipping and flopping, you'll get so after a while when you use them, it really doesn't matter what the wind's doing. You'll feel it and you'll know what it's telling you. But on the front end, you can drop 1 L rod in your hand down to your side, pull the other one up, and then if you want to directions that water vein or you want to see which way it's going to flow, you walk up to it, and after you've gotten there from your direction, and it's going to, and ask which way is the water vein flowing, and it's going to show you which way it flows like that. So the other thing about working in the field with L rods is on windy days is You can turn your back to the wind. It's a little difficult sometimes when they flip and want you to go in another direction against the wind, but you can turn your back to the wind to initially get them to react. The other thing you can do is squat down just a little bit, and it helps to get by the wind. But L-rods, I can't really give you too much more than that. They're great tools. That's what I started out with. Did a lot of wells with them. But whether the L-rod is the one that you'll end up with to start out with, I would say try all three first. So the next one is the pendulum. And again, pendulums, find one that's not too heavy for you and not too light for you. A mistake is a really, really light pendulum. You can do it, but it's slow moving, and it just takes a lot more to move it. But they don't have to be expensive. You can buy store-bought pendulums, but you can you can make your own pendulums. And I'll give you a couple of examples here. I was at an antique store, and I wanted to make a pendulum out of ivory. I got to looking around, and I found a pickle fork, and a small pickle fork, and some of the stuff there. So I bought it. I took it home, cut the fork off from it, and left a little tab, drilled it out, put a loop in it, and that happens to be walrus ivory, which is water, and it's been very good. I put it on a little chain, and I use it quite often. You can use. I have another one that is a crystal. If you want, you go to a store someplace where you see a crystal that really takes your eye, wrap it and put a chain on it. A real simple one is a lamp chain that has a weight on the end of it, where you pull the light bulb on and off. You can pick those up in any Home Depot for almost nothing. So there's some ideas, but there are tons of places you can buy them. So back to how these things really work. When you get a pendulum, first, I think one of the first things to do is try to get a reaction out of that. And again, it's been my experience, if you take a pendulum and you take it right at the neck, and where you can grab onto right at where the chain fastens onto the pendulum itself, start right there, grip it right there, and swing it back and forth, to and fro, from your body in and out, and start letting it down. At some point, it's going to circle. That's a way to tune a pendulum. And it will change day to day or year to year, whatever you want to call it. But you, in general, you'll be somewhere around there. And also, a little tip: most of the time, the shorter the chain, the faster the reaction. And when you're trying to get answers for different stuff, because not all of us do just water, and the faster you can get through your questions and comfortably, then that it really does help to do that. I tip my hand upside down a lot of times and drop the chain into the palm of my hand, and then with my undominant hand, I'll let it down to where I can get a hold of that top of that pendulum with my two front fingers, and then clutch the chain, turn it over, and then start letting it down. But you can just grab it like that. Pendulums are used for almost anything. They're really, from an advantage standpoint, they're very handy to carry. And I have used one to find my wife in a department store a few times, and I've used it to find my car in a parking lot at the airport once. And so there are a multitude of things you can do with a pendulum. But you'll have to play with the length of the chain that you've got, and then you'll figure that out. The key thing with the L-rod, the pendulum, and the Y-rod is to practice. And even I practice quite a bit. I mean, not all the time, but there are some things that I do that taxes my mind that I like to do to practice. But whatever form of practice you've got, then it's a lot to get into right now. But at the end, if you want to take my number, call me up. Sometimes I will tell you many different ways that you can practice for wherever you're at. So I don't know that I have too much more on the pendulum other than they're a great tool. So I think we'll move right into the Y-Rod. The Y-Rod's a little bit different animal, and sometimes it's a little bit harder for some people to grasp the use of it, because just exactly that, grasping it, seems to be where most people have the problem of getting started. And there's not really a right way and a wrong way, but there is a particular way that you should grasp them, and then there are some ways that you can utilize them in so that they're really free flow in your hand, and that's by putting the thumbs on the tips of your Y-Rod, and it will really flow. But Y-Rods take a little bit more, and although many times I have carried a Y-Rod, when I travel, I carry a Y-Rod and I carry a pendulum most of the time. And but they can be made out of, from a material standpoint, wood, which is like a tree branch, and there's a lot of information out there like you got to have a pitted tree, or it's got to be this long, or it's got to be this diameter. And I say to you, you can play with all of that and then determine what works best for you. But I will also say it does not have to be a pitted tree. And so, because if you use the pitted tree, now you're in the box. What are you going to do if you can't find a pitted tree? Figure out stuff and don't stay in that box so that it will work for you. But also, they're made out of plastic, a lot of plastic Y-Rods. The ASD sells some nice little plastic Y-Rods. And I have one of the master dowsers I know. He uses 2 fishing pole tips actually tied together with a piece of wire. And he's very successful with them. The Brits use whale bones a lot for Y-Rods, and they're very short. Some of them are maybe up to a foot, but I have seen them where they're only like 8 inches long. I've never encountered one. I did ask about them a little bit. The ones I use, I make, and they're about 17.5 inches for the short ones, and then I use a field rod that's made out of carbon fiber, and it has a tip on the end of it. But for Y-Rods, you can play with them. There's some YouTube. I'm getting a cup of coffee. Hang on a second here. There are some YouTube vids out there that are pretty good for Y-Rods. But I think with Y-Rods, everyone either needs someone that's a little bit accustomed to them, or a good dowser that can mentor them for a little bit to get them going, because they are just a little bit different. And for the 3 applications, the pendulum, the L rods, and the Y rods, when you're on the front end and you're starting to learn, I taught a class here not too long ago, and we had a couple ladies in here, and one was a pendulum and one was an L rod, but they helped each other, and they got a journal, and I have had contact back and forth with them a little bit, but when you're on the front end, you can get it all out of a book. You can get it all out of YouTube or places like that. But if you want to get down the path a little bit sooner, then seek out the information that you need and the people you need to get it. Go find it. Go get it. And so I recommend if you can, for those that are just getting started, if you can work with a friend and do different projects, especially if you're out on water, and because it's a little bit to learn, and it takes a little bit. And the ASD is full of people who do water and can answer almost any question that you want on it. And I can't get into all of the detail of water this today because it's it's more than I can scope out here. But I'm going to give you all I can. So in general, I'd say practice as much as you can, and then keep your journal. And that way you'll have something as you grow to refer to. So now we'll go into, for people who's just getting started and they're really going to go out after water, if they're all by themselves and they don't have anybody that's got any experience to get into dowsing water, then the first thing that's important, at least it was to me, is to formulate a sheet, a dowsing sheet that encompasses the client's name, when you made contact with the client, and like all of the pertinent information, email address, their physical address, and contact telephone numbers. And then you ask some questions. How big is your parcel? And do you have a map? And ask them to send it to you of your parcel. Because even if you're starting on the front end, it's a good idea to get a little familiar with where you're going and what you're kind of looking at. So I asked them to send me a plot map, and everybody wants to send me topo maps, and I'm like, no, I don't need that. And then they'll say, how about a satellite map? Send it if you want. But my preferred is just a footprint of the property itself that gives me the outlines like that. And then on the front end here, get all of that information in, and then make a note. Okay, I've talked to this person. They're interested in drilling a well. Not quite there yet. So you put a follow-up note in there. When do I have to contact this person, or when is this person going to call me, so that you don't lose it. And then when they do call, write the date and time down so that you don't lose it, and get out there and interface with them. And so now if they've sent you the plot map, you may not play with it just yet, starting out, but at least you can see it. If you want to take it one step farther, even on the front end, take the address, put it on the satellite, like Google Earth, and take the map that they sent you and look at it from Google Earth. That'll give you a visual of where buildings are, where the trees are, where your boundary lines are, like that. Now when you hit the site for the client, you're not cold turkey. And so when you get on site with a client, you ask the client, what areas can we actually work in? It's because maybe we're too close to the septic, 100 feet from the house. We got to be 100 feet away from the septic for a well. And is it too wooded? Has it got swamps? Has it got too rocky or too much elevation? So these are questions that you got to ask the client and say, where can we look for the water? You can look for the water any place. You may not find it in his area, and then you got to get creative and do something else and go find it in another area. But initially, if the client says, okay, over to that barn, down that fence row, hit the woods, come back around like that. Now he's just defined an area, and that's very important. So you want to define an area, even when you're very first starting. So once you define that area, you walk it so that you're familiar with it. Your body and your subconscious is getting in tune with what's there. And after you walk it, you can talk to the client for just a little bit. If you're not comfortable with him being with you, you just use a line like, okay, I think I've got this. I'll get you when I'm done. Very important piece of information here, whether it's the client. Sometimes you'll find that people want to climb on you, and you get an audience. And I have people, and you'll know after you douse for a while, whether the people can be right alongside you or not, just from a comfort zone. You'll feel it. But in general, if you're just getting started, it's better to do it by yourself. So if you've got an audience, just back them off. Just tell them you'll get them when you get all done there, and you'll explain the whole thing. And then your mind is free, and it's not concentrating on somebody else. But so take a quick break after you get that boundary line defined. Just settle out for 5 minutes or so, and you can just I use a clipboard, and you can just settle down on the ground and look at the clipboard if you want. People are watching you, just to cool out. But then when you're ready to douse, you stand up and you ask for, is there a water vein available that's not going to impact somebody else if it's drilled, that's good, potable, year-round water source available to this landowner that can be drilled on the spot that I mark. And if you get a yes, then the next step is you just turn. Use your whatever you're using, L rods or Y rods, or you can do it with a pendulum if you want. But turn until you get a direction. Now at this point, you're still on entry level. So physically, you can just walk out there and until you hit the water bank. But I know you're still entry level. But to save time, and it's just as accurate, within that perimeter that you define, don't move. Just if you get a yes for there is a water vein there, then you ask, is that direction the biggest water vein available? And if it's not, ask for another direction until you get the biggest water vein available that's good. And then you look out across, once you get that direction, you look out across until your eyes hit that perimeter. And you ask, is the water vein available that we're talking about here, is it from that edge of that perimeter back to me? And if it is, then ask, just maybe look at a spot on the ground or a tree or something that's halfway, and just ask, like, is it between that halfway mark? Is it between me and that halfway mark? And if you get a yes, now you got two choices. You can either just walk out there and find it and put a stake in the ground, not a stake, but a marker in the ground, and then I'll tell you the rest here in a second. Or you can define it. If you've got it, if it is halfway to you, you can break it down again, really, if you want to. But if you're starting, it's probably safer. You can go the halfway trick, but that probably would walk out there and find it after that. And one of the things about water veins, there's a little slip out there about the Bishop Law. And the Bishop Law says basically if the sun's up high, the water's going to put a ray off at 45 degrees. And you can actually use that for depth if you want to. But I always say I have a program within me that asks for the very center of the vein that I'm seeking. So when I start to walk and I'm going out across there and I'm looking for that vein, I'm asking for the exact center of that vein. So when you find it, you put a little marker in the ground, and then I reconfirm, is this the vein we're talking about? Yes, it is. Okay. So then I step back and ask if I can flag the vein, and I flag it for about 100 feet or 150 feet, something like that. And then the next step is you step back about 100 feet and scan the vein from one end to the other and see if you can find a wide spot in that vein, because probably there is, and you were taken there for a reason. So when you find that wide spot in that vein, then go up there and put a marker in right there. At this point, most of your homework is done. You found the site, you found the vein, you flagged the vein, and you put a spot at you put a marker at the wide spot. So now I can breathe easy for a couple seconds there, and then from that point on, there's like 3 or 4 more things that I do if you want to kind of nail things down. First one is I'd like to find out which direction the water is flowing. And the reason for that is it really doesn't matter, but I just like to find out which way it's flowing, and then I kind of, at that point, I just ask, make sure that it's not going to impact somebody else if we drill at that point. And so if you're using L rods, you can actually use one for that. Leave one down to the side and just ask, and it will show you which direction it's flowing. And then from a depth standpoint, I stand over the vein, and if you've got L rods, I start by asking, is the water source more than 100 feet? Yes. More than 200 feet? Yes. More than 300 feet? Yes. More than 4? No. So then I back up and come down to 300. And I think, okay, is it 310? More than 310? And you click it off, like 10s and 5s until you hit it. Okay, it's 315. Got it. So that's your depth. And then from the GPM, I don't really ask too much about the vein's GPM itself. I'm more interested in what I'm going to get out at the wellhead, because you can have a pretty hefty vein, and it can run, instead of running flat, it could be running vertical, very hard to get. So the reason for the trying to find the wide spot on the vein was when the driller sets up, you want to try to give him every advantage that you can give him. And because when these are 300 feet in the ground, let's say, or more, then if you're off 1/8 of an inch, you could miss that by 2.5 or 3 feet. And so the wider, if you can get him on a wide spot, it gives him that much more advantage. So once you get we'll back this up just a little bit, we get over top of it, and it's kind of the same process for gallons per minute, only it's going to be at the wellhead and not the vein. So you start clicking off. Is it more than 5? Is it more than 10? Like that. And okay, is it more than 20? No. Well, it turns out it's 18. Okay, so that's what you write on your sheet. It's 18. And a couple of questions that you should ask is, will this vein be viable and produce the same amount of, or near the same amount of water for the entire time that the landowner owns the land? because it's important because things change. You have a farmer and he sells everything, but maybe just a little bit of acreage so that he's going to live on, and then a housing development goes in. Well, when housing development goes in, they pound the ground with heavy equipment, and that heavy equipment really shakes things up below in the submantle. And in some parts of North Carolina, the matrix are sedimentary, very, very soft, and it can just wreak havoc. So it's important to ask if the well will be good for as long as the landowner owns it. You can go beyond that. You can change it. You can do different things, but that's what I ask, to try to get some rhyme or reason out of it. But we're at almost 9 o'clock. Man, I got to get moving here. All right. I was going to tell you a little bit about underground water. I think we're going to leave the Y-Rod at that, and we're going to move on to how I do it. So for me, where I'm at today, I'm going to make this pretty quick for you if I can here. But a client calls me up, and the very first things that I do is I ask him exactly what I told you before. I want his name, his address, all his contact information. I want a plat map. And then I tell him this is a two-step process. The first step is I'm going to read his property, and I want him to tell me before he sends the map, mark any areas that I can't get into or where the septic systems are so I can stay out of their way. But then they send it to you, and then the next step is that in the first step, though, when they send it to you, I also tell them that there's no charge. I do not charge them for looking for water. Sometimes there's no water there, and especially on small parcels. So I just don't do that. So when the map gets there, I sit down with it. I use an L-rod. The L-rod I made, it's a collapsible L-rod. I take it to the field, but I have a little teeny chamber in it. I put water in it. Do I have to do that? No. But it gives me a little round fuzzy. So the program that I use is I tape it down, and I ask for the largest free water vein on that map within the criteria that he and I have come up with. And so I have the L-rod in the dominant hand, a mechanical pencil in the other hand, and I start across the map. And as I get close to that water vein, I have determined that there's one there. So when I get close to that water vein, the L-rod will start to move it. And when it becomes a full 90, I put a dot. And I just walk it across the map several times until it just lays that water vein right out on that map like that. And then after I've done that, then I ask if there's any supplemental veins crossing this one that would be beneficial for me to tap. 2 veins are better than 1. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not there. So I record all this, my depth and my gallons per minute at the wellhead, which direction it's going. I determined that before there. Now on mine, it's a little bit different than what I try to keep it very simple on the front end for you're just getting into this. But on mine, I have things like let's see here. Okay, I have different things on here like matrix. There's a vertical ledge, which is like 45 degrees or more that the water runs through. There's a horizontal ledge, 2 hands over top of each other so it can go laterally. There's a hard rock, soft rock. And then I actually draw the profile of the vein. And then I collect up a lot of information. What's the temperature today? Is it sunny, clear, cloudy, snowy, whatever? What's the surface like? Is it wooded? Is it, just a mantle? Just fields or whatever. So that's the first step. And then the second step is to actually go on site, interface with the client. And on site, I only use 2 things. I use a short L-rod, plastic one, and I have a set of long L-rods with a chamber on the end of it. I used long L rods initially. So I go on site, meet with a client, kind of walk around a little bit and define my area. I usually don't walk around to define my area. I use my eyes, and I define the area by eyes. And then I just say, okay, within the area that I just defined, is the water vein I'm looking for is on this map in this area? Yes. Okay. And then I do that process like we were talking about earlier. Is it halfway, or is it beyond halfway, or is it close to me? And I'll get an indication. And I don't break it down anymore. I just walk out there and find the vein itself, and then exactly what we did before. I'll put just a marker in the ground, and then I'm going to flag it. I'll walk back and forth across the vein and flag it as I go, and then get 100 feet, 150 feet. Then I'll find that wide spot. And then right after that, I'll collect up my information. How deep is it? What's the flow at the wellhead? Is it which direction it's going to go in? And record all that right on my sheet. And on the widest spot of the vein, I'm very careful. I use a Y rod, and I will, wherever I put a pin in before I put the stake in, I'll figure out exactly how wide that vein is. I'll come from one side in and then come from the other side in, and just determine how wide it is, and I record that. And then on the rest of the sheet, it's like I did this on this particular day, and I give this little sheet, that the water sheet, to the client and explain to him what we did. And beyond that, I ask him to let me know when he's drilling and if he run into complications or whatever. But the last instructions are that I give the client: you are the one paying the bill. So there are a lot of good drillers out there. There are some that kind of want to make their own mind up. I've had drill 20 feet away from my stake, and just because there's a little incline. And so I say to the client, you're paying the bill here, so we've put a lot of time and effort into finding this spot. This is where it needs to be. So make your driller drill there. And the other thing is, when we find a spot on the ground and we're directly over top of the water, we are pretty much perpendicular, straight up and down. And so when that rig comes in, tell the driller that you want the mass perfectly plumb, and check it every 100 feet and make sure. If he hits something that's really wild, like a big crack, and it throws him off, chances are he's not going to get back on. But I used to work for drilling rigs for gas companies that drilled 1.5 miles in the ground to get natural gas. And I've experienced just about everything you can think of as far as what can go wrong with drilling. But dowsing wells, there's no absolute guarantee. You're going to get most of them. You're not going to get them all, just because Mother Nature can bite you. The driller can bite you. There's just a lot of little things that can go wrong. And once in a while, as dowsers, we're going to make mistakes. We're not infallible. But those are recommendations that I give to the client before I depart. And then I usually, if I haven't heard from them for a while, I follow up. But you'll get people. I do. And when you do map dowsing, like I just described, and then go out there, I get people that I shoot them the map as soon as I get it done, and rely on them to get back to me. And when they do, I have them take my map and get the well driller and go out there and drill. But not often do they get it. But that's a good learning curve for them. So let's see what we got here. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about what the backpack should, and get into some lighter stuff here, what it should really have in it. I carry plastic stakes. I get them at Home Depot. They're kind of orange colored so you can see them. I carry a heavy hammer, bug spray. The client sheet, of course, I use a clipboard and put the client sheet on it so it's not flipping around with the wind, and you can write on it. And I actually take a small drop cloth and just lay it down on the ground to put my stuff on when I'm out there dowsing, and I get ready to flag and stake. But you should also have flagging tape and landscape flags, because you want to flag the vein itself, so you need the landscape flags. And the flagging tape, once you put a stake in the ground, man, you want to make it as visible as you can. But I use a compass sometimes, once in a great while, especially if there's a lot of neighbors around. I like to get an idea where different wells are, stuff like that. A bottle of water. You got to have a writing pen. And here's a good one. I always take a machete, but the exception is when the client sends me their address, I do get on a satellite and kind of get an eyeball on what I'm dealing with out there. But boy, I've had some tough ones in this wooded and shrub, just all kinds of growed up stuff, and had to hack my way through. But all of these you may not need, but if you've got them in the backpack and you're not going to use part of them, throw it out and just take what you need. So that's that. So how are we doing on time there, Ed? You want me to wrap some more here? I got a little bit more I'd like to say, but up to you guys.
Well, if you've got a little bit more, can you go ahead?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
I want to tell you a couple stories. I was down in Fort Mills. I guess it was last March, and I was hired by a general contractor down there building a couple hundred houses, and I did 13 wells. I was down there like 2.5 days, and their wells ranged from 800 to 1,100 feet deep, from 10 gallons to 60 gallons, and that's a little wild from a concept standpoint. But the builder hammered me a little bit, and so I had to go deeper. And that is one point. When you're dowsing for water, you build in a programmed criteria. And in general, on a front-end basic dowsing, or what I just told you that I do, my basic dowsing program is that the primary vein, the biggest vein available that I'm going to locate, I need it to be no more than, and usually in our area, I start with 400 and then bring it on up. So this general contractor was putting in really big houses. He wanted irrigation, swimming pools, plus the house. And these are 4,000 square foot houses and up. And so I said, well, I'll look for it. You may have to go deep. And he said, whatever it takes. So long and short of that, I did wells that range from 10 gallons to just under 60 gallons a minute for 13 houses down there. But the most important part of this that I was going to tell you was, I told you that when I'm on site, I use a long rod and a short rod, Y rod. So I was down there monkeying around. This last one was a wooded area, and it was really heavy. So I used a little rod a lot, but when I got back in there, it opened up, and I used the big rod. And I went back and forth to the car a couple times, dropped the big rod. My last thought was it was out near the road, because I had laid it down out there. And I got back, and I was devastated. I couldn't find it. So I walked back out to the road. I got the little rods, and I determined that the big rod was in the woods. Somebody hadn't picked it up along the roadway. And I was really, really, did a little search for it, and the little rods took me right to it. And then I picked up the big rod, and I went back to the well site, had a little mat laid down there, and I crashed for about a half hour. It really blew my mind. But I've never lost them before, and those rods are 20 years old. Didn't want to lose them. I was up in Oxford doing a well for a farmer, and I happened to hit. I was using L rods, long L rods, and I happened to hit a vein that just really flipped them. And usually when you get a really, really odd, whether it's Y rod, L rod, odd sensation, not normal out of a vein, a lot of times they're bad. This one was. Well, I was just monkeying around with it there, and I looked across this field, and it was a cat over there that was bounding my way. And that cat came probably 80 yards across this field, come right up to me. I had the L rods in my hand and started clawing on my pants. And so that's how much energy you all are putting off when you're dowsing. You don't realize it, but you're putting off a lot of energy. So I just reached down and pet him. The first well I ever did, my wife and I sold 40 acres, and a nice young lad bought the property and was going to drill a well. And at that time, I had just learned how to use Y rods and off a tree. And so I went up there, and I knew enough what worked for me, but I also knew from experience, if you get a Y rod that's too big for you, it can hurt you. I mean, it can lame you. If you get one that's like, let's just say half-inch diameter at the handles, and it's maybe 3 foot long, you're in trouble. It'll wear you out. So this guy's name was Randy. He was a really big kid. And so I went over and I cut a big one. And he was an outdoor buff, and so I figured it would probably work for him. I found a spot. It was a good spot for a well, and he did drill it and got it. But I said, Randy, take this rod in your hands and do what I tell you. That you've been on mountaintops before and seen little springs that flow out of the ground, and in your mind's eye, and this is what is very good for everybody getting started. In your mind's eye, think of a little mountaintop spring, and you see it coming down through the matrix, down through the rock. Crank that into your brain and hear it and see it, and that's what you want to look for. It's below grade, below surface, but that's what you want to look for. His arms started shaking, and the rod started going up and down, and I said, now when it starts to go down, just hang on to it. Don't let it go down. It's just about, I mean, his face got really, really red. But anyway, that was a fun time. And, I had times when I've used the Y rods. I carry little white sets sometimes when I go in the woods. I'm an outdoor guy. I got in the woods one time and it got totally dark, and I knew the area, but boy, I didn't know how to get out of there. I had a little set of L rods or Y rods in the back pocket, and I pulled them out, and the Y rods took me out of there. Even in darkness, if they're white, you can see them, and you know how they're reacting. But the last one is a good one, just out of Raleigh, toward Oxford. A farmer, a goat farmer, asked me to come up and find a water vein or a spot for him to drill a well. So I went up there, and this was before I mapped out too much. And so I went up there, and I got out, and I kind of did the same thing we talked about before. Just kind of looked around and defined an area, and then I got a direction, and I jumped the fence and started out across this field, and there was a mule out in the middle of this field. And I was beaming in right on him, and he was digging on the ground. And my Y rod took me straight up to him, to the spot he was digging. And I was like, whoa, how many times did this happen? So anyway, I just bunted him a little bit, get him off the spot, and then checked it out, and sure enough, that's exactly where I got it. long story short, 25 gallons a minute was a little over 170 feet deep. But those are a few short stories. I've got a lot of things I could tell you about different well sites and stuff like that, but that's kind of it on there. The next thing I will just talk about, we're just about done here, but next thing I'd like to do is just recommend a few books for people that are maybe getting started. The very first one is the American Society of Dowsers. Has a water dowsers manual. I have had this thing for many, many years. It's got all kinds of lines and drawings and tabs in it, and I used to carry it on site with me all the time. And then the second one, the American Society of Dowsers also carries, it's called The Defining Mind by Terry Ross. And it's just basically a real good, solid book that takes you from A to B, from beginner straight through, and helps you to get going on the back end to climb the ladder of dowsing. There's also a good one out there by Bill Cox, actually edited this, but it was Vern Cameron, an old old guy out of California who drilled wells down to like 2,500 feet for municipalities. And it's called Aqua Video. Very good. That's ASD. You can get that through. Leroy Bull, past president, great map dowsing book. It's called The Art and Craft of Map Dowsing. And it's kind of like a little workshop book. And you can plow through it. It's got all kinds of little exercises in it to help you. I don't know if Leroy is still teaching that anymore or not, but that was a great one. The last one is Evelyn Penrose. You will not find this. You will have to hunt for it. But she was a Cornish dowser. Did over 5,000 wells for the Canadian government back in the early 1900s and for homesteading. She went all over the world. She did gold, she did oil, she did gas, and she was an adventuress. She was unbelievable. But this is her story. It's called Adventures Unlimited. It's by Evelyn Penrose. And it's a worthwhile read if you read it really, really careful and you look at a couple of the pictures on the front end. You'll see how she is deviceless dowsing with her hand. And she gives you quite a few tidbits. But I've read tons and tons and tons of books, like all of you out there probably. I think one of the biggest things that I don't want to say the drawbacks, but one of the biggest things that I don't see in books are they give you generalities. And I really apologize because I have given you kind of a generality with a few tidbits here. But in general, there's not one out there that really, that I found, that really nails it down step by step by step. But I think there should be because unless you have a mentor or want to spend a long time, and either way you should if you like dowsing, because it'll do things for you that you never dreamed that you can do, and it'll take you as far as you want it to. I'm going to close, and I'm going to leave you with my information. And so if you've got something to write with there, again, I'm Dale Miller. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm going to give you my telephone number. It's 919-414-5040. Beyond this, if anybody has any questions or I can help them do whatever, I'm always open to do that and answer any questions for you. On the ASD website, under Southern, listed under Southern and Specialty Dowsers, you'll find me there. And I have a little website that's called wellwaterdowsers.com. And if you want to email me, you can reach me at millerandmillerelectric@gmail.com. And so that's kind of my contact information, and I hope this has been fruitful for you. And anything that I didn't explain well enough, or you want to push the envelope and I can help you out any more, please give me a call or contact me.
Great.
Okay, Dale, that was very well done, Dale.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Now, who else just came on? Shari, were you right on there too?
Yeah. Do you have any questions for Dale or comments?
I'd like to know one of the most interesting wells that you doused. With 700 wells, is there one well that really just gave you a real memory?
Boy, there's a lot of them. I mean,
yeah, I'm sure there is.
Caught in snowstorms and rain, and I was dousing one well, and I was on the top of the edge of this bank, and that's where it happened to be. Slipped in the mud and bowled down about 25 feet and looked like I'd been doused in a Hershey bar.
Oh, boy.
but they're all great. I mean, there's a lot of them. I think the one I told you about, Randy, the kid that the veins just stood out on his forearms when he had that big stick in his hand. That was pretty good. But
okay.
some of them are. I mean, there's just a lot of them out there.
Okay, Shari, you have something else now?
Well, I just wanted to ask Jeanette if she had any comments, or do you have any comments or questions? You want to wrap up, or she'll be on in a second here.
Okay. This is Susan. I have a question.
Okay.
Oh, okay, Susan.
So, would you like to be a speaker for the 2021 Flagstaff Dowser Conference?
Where is that at?
Flagstaff, Arizona.
Wow, that might be kind of fun. I mean, I'd probably have to get more information in. When is it actually?
October 6th to the 13th, 2021, at the Little America Hotel in Flagstaff, Arizona.
Kind of like everybody listening in, I have to check with the wife, but I would venture to say, yeah. How long is it? What would I be required to? Not so much material, but how much time? Is it 1 day, 3 days, 2 days? What?
Well, it's basically a week-long conference, okay. And you'd be speaking for about an hour. So.
Okay.
And you get to meet all of us wonderful dowsers.
Cool. Is it? But do you repeat that each day, or do you just get one shot on it, or what? How does that work?
Well, it depends on how many speakers there are. Right now, I have about 50 speakers signed up for it so far, and it's another year, over a year from now. So it's very popular. It's a very popular conference.
Goodness, yeah. I really would be interested. Yeah.
She could probably email you the information on that if you'd like.
Sure.
Okay. All right.
Okay, Susan, do you want to give out the website for that, or whatever you want to get out?
Oh, sure. For the Southwest for the Flagstaff conference, it's www.dowserssouthwest.com, and that has a list of some of the speakers and information about the hotel and.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
All right. Okay.
I do have one more. You still have your listeners in?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. There was one more small scrap that I wanted to throw out to get people that are really starting, and that's dowsing works, I think, on intuition. And I was going to give them something to stimulate their intuition that they can use every day without a dowsing tool. And that is for years and years and years, part of a lot of times before I would go dowsing years ago, I would make myself do this. And I would staying in a campground and going to visit this master dowser, and he helped me a lot. But before, I'd get up early in the morning before I went to see him, and with my eyes, I would make myself find at least 2 coins on the ground in a campground. And you would be amazed if you really, really get into it. But lay that aside. Everyday practice, if you think about it, consciously make yourself think about looking for coins on the ground, because they're every place. They're in supermarkets, they're at gas stations, they're in airports, they're on sidewalks, they're every place. It's just that we all step over them. But if you can start to find coins on the ground with your eyes, make yourself do it, then pretty soon it will become automatic. You will get that sensation within you, like you pull into a gas station. I have done this before. I know the gas station I'm going to go to. Is there a coin on the ground there? No, not today. Yeah, there is one today. And you'd be amazed at how many times you will find a coin on the ground like that. So I've never graduated to dollars, but I'm still hunting coins. But if you get yourself to doing that, it will really build your intuition. It will help you from a dowsing standpoint.
I agree with you. Anything you do that helps your dowsing is, any kind of practice, that really helps a lot. I want to remind everybody to go to dowsers.org, the ASD website. That's the American Society of Dowsers. And there is going to be a recording of this available within a few days, and you'll be able to listen to the recording if you'd like. If you're a member. You need to be a member in order to enjoy this benefit of listening to any recordings that we've done in the last 2.5 years. And some of these recordings are quite valuable because of the fact that some of these dowsers have already passed away. So it's the only way to actually have access to them. And be sure and look at the calendar to keep up to date on the different activities that's going on now in the dowsing realm. And remember that on Saturday we'll be having a conference call over GoToMeeting, and that's also listed on the dowsers.org website. Okay, Jeanette, are you on the line right now?
Yes, indeed, and thanks for that beautiful reminder, and I want to thank Lisa for putting out these constant contacts. She's been working on that for many years, and she is a hard worker, and we all appreciate everything she can do there at HQ for American Society of Dowsers, and I want to thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for bringing that to everyone's awareness. And I had a question before we kind of wrapped up. Dale, how do you get yourself into that remote viewing protocol, or are you just set because you've been doing this for such a long time?
That's really a good question. A lot of people ask me that. It was pretty easy for me because years ago I was a martial artist, and that's long gone. But there's a side to combat. The other side is like meditation and stuff like that. But in its simplest form, if someone wants to get into remote viewing or map dowsing, which is a form of remote viewing, then I think you have to, get yourself settled down. And I always say when you're doing any kind of dowsing, find a place in your house or someplace where it's quiet and there's no TVs or no radios or nothing like that. But whatever your quest is for remote viewing, it's kind of like when you're over top of the water thing and you're trying to hear that little spring that's up in the mountain in your mind and relating to that as being in the earth, because the mind's eye will pick it up and the inner self will hear it and the mind's eye will see it. So I think when you're remote viewing or map dowsing, you have to get a visual on what you are really going after and just kind of settle down. It takes a while to be able to do that. But one of the things that really opened remote viewing and map dowsing to me was just that. Leroy Bull. When I took that class from him on map dowsing, the door started to widen, and I just worked with it more and more and more until it works pretty good today. How do you do it?
Well, I also, every day I'm in a meditation state, and I also have to be in a quiet zone so I can focus. But sometimes I've also worked on training myself to be in a loud position so I can get in that zone, because when you're out in the field, things happen, whether it's a mudslide going 25 feet down or a snowstorm. So, and I'm with you. That visualization, opening up one's third eye, is key for everything.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it takes a little bit to do that. We're here to talk about water dowsing, but I'll just, as long as you open that door on remote viewing, one of the things that, let's say for L-rod people and it doesn't matter, pendulum people and Y-rod people. I use the Y-rod. But the little white set of Y-rods that you can buy through the ASD, I have similar that I make. But a lot of times when I'm out, I will ask, can I douse? And if I get yes, can I douse, may I ask a question along this line? I don't have anything in my hand. But I've programmed myself so that those white rods are in my mind, in my head. And so you from a remote viewing standpoint, you can get to a point where you can ask questions and you don't have anything with you no matter where you're at. And they're like the Y rods, they're going to flip one way or the other. And it doesn't matter if you got them in your hands or you got them in your mind. It's just like you just have to get comfortable with, you just have to get comfortable with the tangible and the intangible, and cement it together as well.
Fantastic. Okay, we can all master this, and we can't thank Mr. Dale Miller enough for his tutelage, from bringing us to a total success from basic to being a professional. And I would implore everybody to find a teacher, and how generous of Leroy Bull. He's been a teacher to so many, and he's done thousands of wells, and we thank you for just putting a plug in for Mr. Bull, because we all need teachers and mentors. And this is part of the reason why Sherry and Ed are doing this water dowsing conference. And thank you for giving us bullet points from permission to douse and how important it is to keep a journal. And when you have a client, you get all the contact information and what is the goal, what's the end goal, and finding what works for each person. Each device works differently for everybody. We all have a different consciousness, different experiences, and if we practice, Mr. Miller is correct. All of it, from all the dowsing teachers, they all say practice, practice, practice.
That's right. And if it doesn't work,
we all need to be proficient in something. So if 5 minutes is not, 5 minutes right before you go to bed, 5 minutes first thing in the morning, it doesn't matter. Just practice. And find something that you like. Thank you for reminding us to have fun. And, maybe it will take that shiny pendulum or shiny L-rod. Or maybe it might be, a Y-rod directly from Del Miller's website, and from him directly get that energy that he's made and he's provided for us. But we can't thank you enough. And recommendation of books. So you gave us several books to look into, and I'm interested in getting one of those older ASD water dowser manuals that were of the past, because we've got a couple people working on those in the near future for everybody to assist.
That's great. Yeah.
And we thank you, Sherry and Ed, and everybody who contributes making this program every month. Thank you, everyone, and please visit Del Miller at wellwaterdowser.com. Sherry?
Thanks an awful lot, you guys. I really appreciate the invitation and the being able to come on and speak with you and for you and try to help.
Well, thank you, Dale. You've provided a lot of information for the Dowsers and for somebody who's interested. We appreciate that very much. So, Ed, do you have a final comment there?
Well, I'm just very pleased with what I heard. It was very thorough, very well done, and I'm very happy that you came and were one of our really good speakers. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Ed and Jeanette and Sherry and G, I guess. But it was a pleasure, and maybe we'll all get to see each other someday.
I hope.
I hope so.
Yeah.
All right.
And a Flagstaff.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay,
I
so
like that.
hopefully we see everybody at the on the online West Coast Conference coming up starting the 3rd of July.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
any
Hope
last
so.
comment on that? Maybe a reminder, Susan, for the
Yep.
Okay.
www.dowserswestcoast.org. You can there's an email address on there, which is info@dowserswestcoast.org. Just send an email. We're sending out email information, and we're putting up the schedule shortly here. And with all this, we have over 50 speakers, over 60 speakers actually, and we'll be running 24 hours a day for 5 days. We'll be playing classic Dowsers as well as the new people, and a lot of your favorites. So I look forward to seeing everybody out in the internet. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
How many days, Susan?
5 days, July 3rd to the 7th, starting at 8 a.m. Santa Cruz, California time, and we'll be going till Tuesday night. Till the cows come home on Tuesday night. Moo moo moo.
That was about what, 3 weeks? What is it? 3 weeks?
How many days? Today is the 15th. It is 18 days from today. T-minus 18 days.
18 days. Wow, coming up.
I have my schedule. I have my benchmarks. Yes, it's coming up quick. So we're ready.
It's free.
Yeah,
And it's free, you guys.
And it's free. Absolutely. Yep. We just want you to support the speak. We want you to support the speakers if they have books or some sort of talent or services. We are doing this for free to support our speakers. Because we love you. We love all of our Dowser friends and family, and you are family to us. And this is we want to cheer you up and inspire you and make you learn something, or hope you learn something wonderful that you can pass along to your friends and improve your life. So, thank you.
Oh, wow.
Fantastic. And I would like to thank all 90 participants who came on the program tonight. Thank you very much.
Oh, wow.
Excellent.
Supporting us.
Wow. That's great. That's great.
Good night, everybody.
Namaste.
Okay,
Good night.
good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night.
Thank you again. Good night.